Welcome to the podcast. This is Lessons for Life. Here today with my good friend and first interview ever, Keaton Craig. Keaton, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This is going to be awesome. Hope to put some stuff out there for people to learn a little bit about different people and their experiences. So Keaton, who is Keaton Craig?
Who is Keaton Craig? Good question. Just a little background. I moved down south to southern Alberta when I was 14 years old. My dad is an RCMP officer, so that was actually our first posting. So we went to Picture Butte, graduated high school from Picture Butte, and then moved into Lethbridge and went to school. I'm a massage therapist, and I also have a diploma in exercise science. And yeah, I'm working full time. First year out of school, recently married. It's all fun.
Nice. So exercise science, is that does it give you the background for coaching or training? Like what does that?
It's geared more so towards the fitness side of it, personal training side. There's a lot of anatomy courses with there. There's some exercise programming courses. Generally, it's basically a practical version of kinesiology. Not necessarily practical, but more hands-on.
Okay.
You learn about injury rehab, you learn about fitness testing, and then lots of people take that and then go into a degree program like kinesiology, or then venture off into nursing or any other field like that.
Okay, so that training has kind of helped you a bit with the massage as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I don't technically use it at East Meets West, but I think about the stuff that I've learned literally every day that I'm going through. It was really good for learning kind of how the body moves versus kind of just the muscles themselves.
Okay.
Massage therapy was more so, kind of the black and white, these muscles are here, they do that. But with exercise science, it's more the technical side of it, a little bit more into the biomechanics and even some physics with movement as well too.
Nice,
Mhm.
nice. Okay, so you said you're recently married. That's obviously a good experience.
Absolutely challenging, but it's good.
Challenging.
Yeah, it's lots of fun.
Yeah. Well, there's lots to learn when you get married. There's a lot of adjustment.
Absolutely,
No matter how much you think you know somebody, you don't necessarily know them.
for sure. There's
Right.
things I find out. Actually, my dad said one time that I was having some troubles with trying to figure out the route that I should be taking with one of my older girlfriends. And he said, well, the good thing about being married and getting into that is that I found new things about your mother out every day, and I've been married for 32 years, so
There you
we'll
go.
continually learn, which is good.
There you go. That's awesome. So you've taken a lot of schooling,
Mhm.
obviously. How important is education in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've done 5 years total, and then plus obviously high school and everything else in between. So for education on my side, a formal education, I think is not quite as important in my opinion as gaining experience with a lot of the stuff that you're doing when you're in your field already. Depends on what you're looking at, and I guess that could be a form of education as well too, but in a formal setting.
Like work experience and
absolutely.
training under
Yeah,
people that
absolutely.
are already doing that and
Yeah.
learning from mentors.
For sure. And yeah, mentors is a good way to put it. I always am, when I was younger, I was constantly looking towards, in a sports setting, obviously the professionals and almost being mentored from them versus learning directly from a coach or education standpoint in that way. So education is extremely important, and I think that people should be definitely striving to have more education, whether that comes from a classroom or whether or not that comes from mentors in everyday life.
Okay,
That's
so
where I stand with it.
next question on education then. Classroom or life lessons?
You can learn a lot of life lessons in the classroom, but which one is more valuable? I love learning in a classroom setting if I am interested in what's going on. Like if I get bored in a classroom, I might as well not even be there because I'm not going to be paying attention.
True that.
But
true that.
but you know, the being out of school now, just for the 1 year, I do miss being in the classroom setting. But I'm realizing, even in people that I meet every day, like a classroom setting isn't the most important way to learn that I've found. Like a lot, like we were saying with mentors, like you can learn so much more from just paying attention to somebody who's already a master in their field.
Right.
Yeah, I think at least.
Okay, and learning in a classroom setting, obviously you get a lot of input from other people at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say the instructor asks a question,
Yeah.
3 or 4 different people give different answers
Mm-hmm.
or different input on something.
Absolutely.
And then for, out in the world, like, say at work,
Mm-hmm.
you get experience from different people in your office or in your field all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I find that, like, even in high school, I learned more about people, and in college actually, with being inside the classroom and kind of learning how everybody else reacts around, even like going into a test. Right, like you can see other people, if they're comfortable with it, if they're stressed, if they're antsy about everything, you can kind of pull from there. But then, once again, if you get into like the real world, without the classroom, then you can kind of see as well too with those people. So that's a good one. I don't know what I would value more.
Right. I think you have to learn classroom work or classroom learning at some point through your life. You need to learn basics and skills like that. But I think you have to learn life lessons as well. Like, I mean, when you go out, you graduate high school and stuff, and you go to rent your first apartment.
Yeah. Big change.
People don't know that you have to put money down to pay your bills or hook up your power and your telephone and your cable and everything. Like, not everybody just knows that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
People don't necessarily know how to operate a bank account.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought they should have a classroom or a class in school called life lessons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have a whole semester where people learn about
taxes,
how to pay bills, how to hook up your power, to, shut off your water to your house. Just things that you just don't learn. And those are things that are only learned once you get out in the real world.
Yeah. Or how to buy vehicles and going through lease processes
right?
and everything like that, or financing.
Things like that that would make a big difference for people.
Yeah. But I also am a huge believer in the trial by fire, like just getting in it and then seeing where it goes from there.
Right. Just go learn.
Learn a lot from just learning.
What's one thing in your life that you've accomplished so far that you're most proud of?
Ooh. That's a good one. There's not actually very many that I'm super proud of. I would say more so not something that I've accomplished, but kind of the way my outlook in life has changed over the years, and recently more so, like almost the unrelenting positivity, like just trying to be optimistic. There was a time when I was like 3 years ago about where I had almost a completely different viewpoint and mindset on life, and then there was a switch that flipped, and then I kind of tried to have no bad days at all. That was one of my New Year's resolution.
Right.
And that legitimately changed the entire outlook on the rest of my life, and that was only about 3 years ago. So I'm still trying to keep the good times going with that, but allowing yourself to have down days, but then continuously pushing to have the best days that you possibly can. So I guess an accomplishment would be more so of a mindset change than anything that I would be proud of myself for. There's sports stuff that is great, but as soon as the sports were done, I realized that they play a small part in life.
So you mentioned positivity. So you made a change a while back, and that changed your outlook.
Mhm.
So how important is it to be positive or have a positive attitude, whether it's with family or friends or in your work environment? How
Mhm.
important is it to be positive?
Yeah, that it's, in my opinion, it would be probably one of the most important things. Keep it. You can even go from, like, on a military standpoint, like when morale is low in a group, nobody's going to be succeeding because everybody's going to be downtrodden and obviously negative with it, and nobody's going to push forward. Everybody, generally, most people would quit in those scenarios, but if you have a good morale and everybody's up and they're uplifted and they're feeling good about themselves and feeling good about others, then yeah, they can accomplish a lot more things than if they're continuously focusing on negative. So especially in a workplace environment, it's imperative. Like, you can at some points, but it seems to be definitely a much better idea to be staying positive in those ways.
Do you find when people are negative around you, do you find it drags you down?
Absolutely. In fact, like, I've had many conversations with my wife about that, and she's not negative, but doesn't have always the happy-go-lucky kind of feel with it. She's much more sometimes a little bit more realistic with things than I am. So that can sometimes not necessarily discourage, but it definitely affects, when you wake up in the morning and somebody's negative right away, it doesn't work out that well and either of them for the rest of the day. But in, like, even a workplace environment, like, if you're feeling good and then you get into work and everybody else there is grouchy, then it's not going to be a very enjoyable day.
Drags you down.
Absolutely, it drags me down for sure. But it's a challenge to also try and get those people who are consistently negative to try and kind of coax them into being positive, or usually using humor in those ways when people are complaining. I'm saying, well, you could be dead. So yeah, you're not.
At least
so
you're on the right side of the
At least
grass.
we're going. Yeah. At least we're moving forward.
Yeah, it's I always try and be happy and positive around people and smile and say hi all the time, and
Yeah.
just hopefully try and brighten up people's days a little bit, right?
Lend a hand when you can.
Right, try and make things a little better for everybody,
Yeah.
and hopefully over time that works out, to a positive. Who in your life has been your biggest influence, your father or your mother?
I'd say right now my dad is my largest influence out of the two. But when I was growing up, me and my mom, we were the only ones in the house because my dad was gone for the majority of my grade 8. He was gone to police training. So we were driving, like, we were going to Calgary, we were going to Edmonton, we were driving all over Alberta with soccer. So me and my mom spent a lot of time together and tons of car time. And generally with my family, it was radios on quiet and we're talking about life or whatever it is going on in our lives. So
Good call.
sometimes, not after a game. After a game, it was don't talk to me because if it was
No.
bad, which it usually was, because so self-critical of myself.
No game
Yeah.
analyzing.
Oh yeah. It was like my mom would have been like, "Oh, you did great," and we would have won. But I had a terrible game. I would have been like, "We'll be quiet." Yeah. Just leave me alone. I even said it at some point. I'm like, "Don't talk to me for like half an hour. Just give me half hour to kind of take it in, mull it over, and then we can talk."
Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids, when we were in Bremerton, my kids played hockey in Tacoma, which was about almost an hour's drive,
Yeah.
and my wife drove the kids out 4 or 5 nights a week. Right after school, she'd pick them up and they'd go out and they would play back to back to back. So
Wow.
they'd be out there all evening, but they had a lot of car time, and she said it was the greatest time for her bonding with the kids.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like you know,
Yeah.
the radio was on quiet. They talked about life, they talked about school, they talked about sports, girls,
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
Anything. But they, there was some big bonding that went on,
Mm-hmm.
as they did that over the years, and learning about the kids, things that you maybe didn't know, or
Oh yeah.
as they're growing and going
Mhm.
through their teenage issues, and being the parent trying to help and support them
Mm-hmm.
along the way.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing, conversation between families, and I don't think that happens as much anymore as it used to.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like I didn't have a cell phone until I was 17. So like those were, and by that time I was driving myself to practices and everything. So like every year before that, since I was 8, right, I was never playing Game Boys. I was never on my phone. I was never doing anything like
Nice.
DVD players even. Like we were straight conversation the whole time. That's probably why I think I get the gift of the gab from my mother for sure. My dad not so much, but he's more the stoic, quiet type. But
Yeah,
when he speaks, you listen. So
yeah.
yeah,
My dad speaks with a commanding voice
yeah.
usually. Yeah. Who, outside of your family, who has had the biggest impact on your life so far?
Outside of my family. There's been a couple soccer coaches that have impacted me quite a bit with, kind of discipline and how you're looking at specific scenarios. But yeah, I'd say probably one of my biggest impacts in that way would be my U16 and U18 soccer coach. He had a huge impact early on in my life, which then still translated into stuff that I'm doing today. But even friends, like, and we could consider them family as well too, but I have a lot of really, really good friend group, and we challenge each other consistently, and they influence a big part of my life right now.
Nice.
So right now, friend group for sure. I have 2 roommates with my 3 roommates, including my wife. So it's a busy house, but there's a couple of those boys have a massive impact on my life right now.
Nice.
Keep each other very accountable with a lot of the stuff that we're doing, and get into some trouble sometimes. So that's always fun too.
That's
A
awesome.
good influence, a good trouble.
Influence, yeah. So you mentioned your soccer coaches. What role has sports played in your life?
It was basically the only thing I did when I was between the ages of 8 to shoot, like,
Now,
yeah, basically
you
20.
still play soccer.
Yeah, very few, one time a week now instead of 7 days a week. But
Right.
yeah, that was the only thing that I did till I was I started to kind of slow down. 23 really, like last year. Like that was the big turning point. Like it was kind of crazy when my final game was over. I remember I never wanted to play. Like I don't want to play soccer ever again. Like it was it was not the best way to end a soccer career in that way, but it was it was very there's a lot of space that I had, a lot of time, and at the beginning I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to be able to do. And like, I could never imagine being a professional and then retiring when you've been playing it for 40 years. Like, that would be insane. So, yeah, it's had a huge impact on my life. There's been a lot of life lessons that I've learned from it as well too, with, there's a ton of discipline, also same thing with positivity, morale, the mental side of it, the physical side of sport, the friendships that you grow. Most of my friends, I at some point have played a sport with them as well too. There's not very many people that I've never played a specific sport with that I can even think of right now. Whether or not it was from when I was living back in Rimbey, when I was like under the age of 14, or even till when I came to Lethbridge. That was a good way for me to get integrated from having zero friends coming down here. Like, sports were a huge impact, and then grew my friend group. And then some of those people were in the one person was in my wedding party, the only person, and I had played sports with them. So I'd say it has a massive impact.
So you've gained some good experiences from playing.
Absolutely, yeah.
What kind of things have you learned from being part of a team or a team environment? Or what kind of advice could you give to other people based on your being on a team?
Always be inclusive, like, especially in a team setting where, we'll just use college for example, where you're at a higher level and you're trying to get to a same collective goal, and if you're not including other people into it that are on your team, or people are getting excluded, whether or not it's on purpose or not, or maybe they're just not as social as everybody, but just making a huge effort to be able to get everybody together. Because then when people come together, like I was saying with work even, like when you come together as a team and you're going toward that goal, it's so much easier to attain it than if you have, out of a 21 guy roster, you have 18 people who are really close and a couple who don't even bother to do anything with it. You need everybody in there. You're only as strong as your weakest link in those scenarios.
I was going to bring that up, because that's one of the big things that we always used to say in hockey is you're only as good as your worst player.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to try and build up the slower players, the ones that aren't maybe quite as skilled, and you have to work with them and make them part of the team.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working online together, you have to be able to sync with each other. Whether you have to slow down a little bit to receive the pass from them, or you have to navigate so that you can give them a place to pass because they don't necessarily want to pass into a crowd, or whatever you've got to do.
And I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily realize, and this was just like this past year that I've kind of been thinking about this, is that like the more that you're helping somebody else in that scenario and trying to adapt around what they're doing, the more you're going to be able to grow, because then you'll be able to do all the skills that you have potentially if you are not the weakest link, and then you'll be able to learn how to uplift somebody else and bring somebody else up. And then if you even are the weakest link on the team, and if everybody else is trying to get you better, you can't not get better unless you're not trying.
Right.
But
do you find maybe not being number one is good, because you're always trying to play catch up? You always got somebody that you want to reach that level?
Yeah, I think that's where also, if you are number one, that's where mentality comes into place, like the mental game. Yeah, you have to be consistently consistently trying to improve, because there's always going to be somebody coming up behind who's trying to take that number one spot. What if it's an individual sport? That's, you got to always constantly be doing that. And I think that with all the most successful people, whether or not it's within sport or within work environment, like you have to always be striving to be the best that you can possibly be, whether or not you're number one or number three.
Right.
Because then
Personal best.
the moment you start taking your foot off the gas is the moment somebody else comes in.
Right, and if you start kind of getting lackadaisical and just kind of kicking back,
Yeah.
you're not gonna grow. You're gonna plateau
Yeah.
or maybe decline
Yeah. And I think
over
that
time.
that was a big thing that I started realizing with myself is when I got out of a competitive environment, like I started being even more harder on myself than I was previously. And I was like, holy, like I'm not even competing against anybody. I'm only competing against myself.
Right.
And so now it's like, oh crap. But you look in the mirror and the person's like trying to get you right away. So.
Right. Yeah. You always have people chasing you. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
When you're good,
Mm-hmm.
there's always people behind you coming up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that in any sport.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like that in anything in life.
Yeah.
Work, play, sports, whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if the word for this is ego, but like using that drive that happens when you are trying to constantly be the best at something, you can do a lot of good stuff with that if you're consistently trying to push yourself to become the best that you can possibly be in
Right.
every scenario. But it can be also a little bit overwhelming.
A lot of sports,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of coaches, a lot of team players,
Yeah.
good friends that you've played sports with. Whether it's sports or work or just people in general, who is your idol? Who do you look up to and say, okay, sometime I want to be just like them or be able to do what they're doing?
Mm. Huh. When I was growing up, there was one soccer player in particular that I always tried to, like I was always practicing the little skills that he would do during games and everything, like tricks and everything. So when I was younger, on a sports standpoint, it was a Brazilian player called Ronaldinho. And he's been, for a long time, he was the best player in the world. And then dropped off. But he also has a really, like he's constantly smiling on the field. Like he has a very positive energy that you can kind of see even through the TV, like how he conducts himself. He's always having fun. He's playing with the crowd. He's doing all these kinds of things. And that was, for me, that was kind of my style, the creative style when I was growing up that I tried to look towards. But I would say that honestly right now my dad is probably the largest person that I'm gravitating towards too in order to try and strive to be like him.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
yeah. And he would be his first response would be, wow, that's a lousy person to be looking after, which also I think is why I'm trying to be like that with him. So
Right.
yeah,
Give him a little boost.
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Right on. That's cool. When I was when we lived in Barhead, I played hockey. We used to go watch the juniors play there all the time. And there was a gentleman, we called him Smiley.
Yeah.
I can't remember his last name, but that's what he was like, just like your soccer player. He would be skating down the ice and someone would come up and just slam him into boards as hard as he could. And they'd come off the boards and he'd be smiling and look at the guy and just keep skating. And I always, that there, kind of like you, it just always made me feel like, yeah, you don't have to be mad all the time and get grumpy and everything. You just keep smiling
Go
and
with
do
the
what
flow,
you love,
yeah.
right?
And especially in a
The game.
sport setting, right? Like at the end of the day, it is just a game, right? And I think that that's where I started to lose a lot of the love for soccer when I was growing up because I was so, like I was taking it way too seriously. And then it started to, like I was so hard on myself that like when I would make a mistake, like I'd just like shut down. Because I'd be like, oh, I gotta like do better. I gotta be doing this all the time instead of just like relaxing and having fun with it. Like, this is a good hockey reference. Like my dad would always say when I was uptight, like stop squeezing your stick so hard. like just relax.
Yeah.
And like he even said that during soccer.
We used to call it cement hands.
Yeah, just
those are the guys when the puck comes to them, they can't softly put it in the net. They go whack and it just goes wherever because they can't control it.
And I think that if you just relax, have some fun with it.
Yeah. So where is the balance between being self-critical and analyzing everything you do on the field and having fun and letting it flow? Where's that balance? How do you get that balance?
I don't know if I know. I don't know if I've found it yet, quite frankly. Like a lot of it, it's going to be interesting to see what my new season in men's league is like, because I'm approaching it with a completely different attitude now. Like there's a lot of riffraff that goes on in men's league, like people fighting and stuff like that has no part to be played in the game, especially when like most of the guys are around their 30s and they have kids in the stands.
Right.
And they're like fighting 20-year-old boys,
nice,
like men. Yeah, it's like that doesn't make much sense.
Nice attitude to show for your kids.
Absolutely. Right? So I maybe I'll find it this year, and I think that a lot of it has to do with kind of who you're surrounding yourself with as well too, your teammates as well too. And I can go back to the team setting, or even a work environment. We're just talking about sports, but like if you're surrounding yourself with people who are constantly trying to push you, but also it's a competition, we're having fun with it, then it is beneficial to be a little bit self-critical of yourself, but also then if you see everybody else is relaxed and having fun, it's going to be a little bit easier for you too. So I don't know if I've found that balance yet. I don't know if I really ever will.
But it's kind of I guess you got to kind of find that happy place, right? That happy medium, and try and live there.
And I think a lot of stuff for me is like find something else that you're doing that you can really just have fun with and not worry about it. And I think that like for me right now, like doing some artwork, that's where I just, whatever, have fun and don't worry about it too much. And then like in the gym, I'm pretty serious with the gym and everything, so self-critical in that standpoint, because then it will potentially make me physically better. But then with art, like I'm just doing it for fun, so I don't need to necessarily be nitpicking every specific thing that goes wrong. And if it happens and make a mistake, then whatever.
It is what it is.
And I think that I learned that like in art especially, because I started to get a little bit more serious with it, and then I was realizing like I have no idea why I'm even being serious. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So, and then my wife would be like, I'd have a painting that I've done and it would have a couple mistakes or something, and or I wouldn't just purely not enjoy the painting that I've done. It would be like, oh, I wasted my time basically. And then she'd be like, oh wow, that one's awesome. Yeah. Or like a friend will be like, that's my favorite one you've done, and I'm like, I wanted to throw it out 2 minutes ago. So I think not taking
and now it's the $1 million.
Oh yeah, and there's even I was at there's a little market, a couple markets going on downtown yesterday, and one of them was in an art gallery, and I was looking at this painting and it was over $5,000, and it had this big massive blue smush of paint, and everything else was like green and dark and red, and like it was actually a painting of a cowboy and his horse by a fire, and there was like fireflies everywhere. It was very bright, very vivid, but then there was like a blue smudge on it, and I was like, that was paint. Yeah, exactly. I'm like that. And I was even sitting there, I was like, I wonder if he did that on purpose, or if she did that on purpose, or. And I was like sitting there thinking, I'm like, oh, they did a good job though, because it got me looking at it. So I don't know, not taking everything too seriously in that standpoint, at least for me. But there's some things that I think that you should be a little bit more critical of yourself on things, how you're talking with others, and in those ways, social settings sometimes. So, but then stuff like art, just let it go, have fun.
Yeah. Art's a good outlet.
Oh yeah.
Do you sit down and just start painting, or do you usually have a plan when you start something? Like, what do you do?
Recently, I've been doing some like custom pieces for people, so that one's a little bit more of a challenge, I find, because I'm trying to convey something that somebody else wants.
Not
And I might,
what's
yeah,
in
not what's
there.
in my mind already, which is generally when I have a fun time. But basically, my process is I kind of, if somebody was to ask for a painting, like I'd get all the details from it and then kind of mull it over for a little bit, and then I only paint one day a week, because if I allowed myself to do more, I'd be broke. So, but so then when the process comes, like I am always listening to music, I constantly have music playing, and it doesn't really matter what kind it is. So then I'll just set everything else up, get the consistency of the paint good, have the music playing, and then I start painting.
Something in the background.
Yeah, I usually do one painting that is kind of like the warm up almost. Like I'll kind of see how the paint is running, if I need to change anything in that way, what color selection I have, do I like the colors, do I need to change it a little bit? Because I'll do, if I have 3 paints, I'll just do as many paintings with the paint that I have, and I won't save any of it, because the paint that I'm using right now, if I let it sit, it just gets bad.
Yeah.
So I'll just use up all the paint, whether or not that's 5 paintings or 10. I don't really put a time limit on it or a time frame, so I just kind of go with the flow in that way. And generally I'll do like, try and do 3 of the commission pieces that I have and then 1 for myself. And then kind of 3 and 1, kind of 3 to 1 ratio for that. But I enjoy it so much, like it doesn't really matter what I'm doing as long as I'm doing it. Like I love it. So
Yeah.
the process in that way is pretty relaxed, which
Nice.
is, yeah, and that's pretty much how I do most things
Nice.
as well too, is not too much of a plan.
Well, you're a pretty laid back guy.
Yeah, skeleton plans are my favorite.
Yeah.
Nothing too particular, just go with the flow.
My wife and I, you fly by the seat of our pants
Yeah.
90% of the time.
Yeah.
We don't often have a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we might come home at night and say, hey, you want to go out for dinner?
Perfect.
Yeah, okay,
do
let's
it.
go.
Yeah.
Like, we don't plan it for Friday night
Mhm.
or, you know, or 7 o'clock or
Yeah.
whatever. No, we just go,
Yeah.
right? You want to go to the movie tonight? Sure, what's on? I don't know, let's go look,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's never a plan, and that to us, that's just kind of, you know, let it be free, do what you feel,
Mhm.
and have fun,
Yeah.
right? And I know it frustrates some people because they say, well, no, we can't go, we have this, and everything's lined up, and I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, whatever.
Alright.
But they get frustrated with us because we're not regimented.
Yeah.
But
That's
you know what, it's easy.
It is easy to be, but do you find that you're, like, do you get like a lot of stuff on the go and then you kind of get swamped with things, or do you have a pretty good job at like,
Sometimes.
yeah, because that's when, like, that was a big thing. I'm such a procrastinator, and like in school, like I just like, I don't need to do it, but that's more so laziness,
And
being
then-
flying through the
And
seat
then
of
the
your
night
pants.
before, you're doing
Oh,
that
yeah.
20-page essay.
Yeah, and then if I'm lucky enough to get a good grade, then I'm like, oh, well, I obviously don't have to do it earlier. I can just keep doing this. Which, yeah, I don't think that's the right formula.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite teacher in school?
Yeah,
Like
elementary school. Not so much elementary, but definitely into high school. My math teacher I had a lot of fun with my math teachers. And then, I don't know, Picture Butte High School, when I was there, was so good. Like, there wasn't a really teacher. There's teachers I didn't get along with because I was a little troublemaker and I was disrupting class because I was bored. But, if I had to pick, it would be my math teacher. And then I had a lot of good instructors in
Nice.
college as well too that were, yeah, there's a couple. My track coach is like, he very, very intelligent guy and knows so much about like exercise physiology and a slew of other things.
Do you find you studied more, or did your projects on time more often with classes you enjoyed as to classes that were
I was never, well, not never is a strong word, but generally I was very punctual. Like I didn't miss many assignments. I'm also of the mindset it's like, well, if it's gonna be late, I'm not even gonna do it. Like it's like, so, and that probably doesn't work out with a lot of teachers as well too. But that's probably where my self-criticism comes in as well too. It's like, well, if you were lazy enough to not get it done on the deadline, like you shouldn't be able to do it at all, and
Right.
then just double down on the next one that you're doing in order to possibly bring your grade
Yeah.
up. But
make
yeah,
big
yeah, but it was more so the class engagement that in a classroom setting that I enjoyed. I was more engaged in class and asking questions and trying to figure things out. But assignment wise, I was pretty much very punctual with every assignment, and then I would put more effort into the other ones, not necessarily more enjoyment into them. The classroom setting was really where that would have been evident, was me getting excited about stuff.
Do you feel that you learned a lot in school from your teachers?
Yeah, yeah, that's a tough one. Because I'm very much like, I need to do something in order to learn from it. Like I enjoy being taught, but then obviously when you have to, carry out the action of whatever it was that you were taught, that's when I'm learning the most, is basically, like, once again, trial by fire. Like, get in there, make a mistake, learn from the mistake, and then continue to push forward from those different areas. But I did learn, there was, it more so in college, I learned a lot about teaching styles and really who was a good teacher based off of the relationships that they had with the students.
Right.
Right, like that, my track coach, there was a couple times where I would go to him with an assignment and he would be like more than willing enough to look it over and before I handed it in.
Right.
Say, what
Give you
adjustments
some
can I make?
pointers.
Yeah. And then that's when I would be learning more, is when people were giving me that constructive criticism right off the
Right.
start, versus being like, you just got a 60 and that's what happened. It's
Right.
like, oh, well,
That sucks.
don't know much. Yeah, shit. So,
Do you, teachers always want to teach you something because they want you to know things when you're done the class.
yeah.
So how do you know when you know?
I think when you're able to, like, almost when it becomes second nature. I think that's a good way to put that, is if you're not thinking about what you're doing because you know it so well, then you truly have learned that as well too. Like, if you have the ability to just do it and almost rely on the instinct that you've kind of put into your brain, I think that's a good factor, as well as being able to teach others in that standpoint.
Okay.
Like, there's an Einstein quote, I think, that was saying, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's basically like, if you do not have the ability to explain it to a 6-year-old child, then you truly don't know enough about that subject.
Right.
So, like, if you can't explain it to somebody who is potentially not at the same level as you are in that field, then you don't really know your field. But if you have that ability to then explain it to them and then they get it, then you really do know what you're talking about.
Right.
Versus just spewing things and saying facts and random words, and then they're like, oh wow, you're so smart. It's like, yeah, I actually don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Which is 90% of what I do.
That's awesome. That's That's awesome. Um, what do you uh, what do you do for, like you kind of talked about your art and relaxing, putting on music and stuff. Do you have any sort of meditation or yoga or self-healing techniques that you do to prepare yourself, I don't know, for a soccer game or for the day, like at the beginning of the day? Do you have something you do that gets you in game mode?
There's a couple things, like in a sport setting, it was a lot of like listening to music and getting excited and getting hyped up for the game.
Getting pumped.
Yeah, getting pumped up. Yeah, and not necessarily even like rah style, but just, you know, having a really good warm up, like paying attention to what the coach is saying, like being really trying to be dialed in.
Getting in the zone.
Yeah, in the zone. And then like routine. Some people would call it superstition, but just like the way you're putting your stuff
Always
on,
put your
right foot,
leg in
yeah,
first.
right foot, left cleat, and then left shin pad, right shin pad, pull the socks up, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah.
But not anything in terms which I should have been doing with like visualization and everything like that, and kind of thinking in those ways before a game. I didn't really do much about that. I didn't know a lot about how powerful that can be. But then on like a day-to-day basis, very habitual, like wake up, have a shower. If I have time to eat breakfast in the morning, I do. If I don't, then I pack it and take it and have it at lunch. Get to work, do the specific things, make coffee for everybody, and then continue on the day.
Right.
And coffee for everybody is put very lightly. I usually drink the whole pot myself, so. But I do wish that, like, and maybe this is going to be something else that I try as well too within the new soccer season, is doing some visualization and everything in those ways would be. I think that would be good. Yeah, I know for a fact there's one player in particular that I know who consistently would do it on a regular basis, and like when everybody else is going crazy, he'd kind of sit with himself, close his eyes, and visualize what he was doing. And I think that was probably, and he was a killer on the field. So
One of my boys played junior hockey down in the States, and him and one of the guys that he played with, he's always been very, like you said, structured on how he puts his gear on, superstitious, however you want to call it, you know, and he gets in the zone, you know, certain things, certain times, sit and relax, chat for a sec, continue, but only right side, you know what I mean? And so he would always want to be the first one dressed and out the door when they go to get on the ice for warm-ups. He'd always want to be the first one to the ice surface, but then he'd stand at the gate and let everybody else go on the ice and then go on last. But he would always, you know, fist bump everybody and kind of get pumped up, right? Get in the zone, so to speak. And then, I don't know if you ever watch hockey and how they warm up and everything, but they go through their warm-ups and everybody's shooting pucks and warming up the goalie and everything, and then people start going off the ice.
Oh yeah.
Well, my son was the one that would always skate around and shoot that last puck, right? Be the last one off the ice. But like I said, him and his buddy were both those guys.
Yeah.
So they'd go around until, you know, one of them would say, okay, it's time to go. So he'd go, and then the last one would go. Or if they just kept going and going and going, they would end up getting to a point where the Zamboni's coming on. And, okay, we got to get off the ice. So they would skate over the door, and you could see them doing rock, paper, scissors to see who gets to stay on last, right? So
that's funny.
So the whole superstition thing and getting in the zone and being ready, you know, I mean, he used to come on the ice, and his coach would always, they'd always give him a pep talk right before they went on the ice, and he'd say, coach, one more thing, and he'd pull his hand out and he'd say, give me some sprinkles. So the coach would do this, and
Give him
okay,
sprinkles.
go. You know, like, so
That's funny.
there's a lot that plays into
I had
that kind of thing.
I had a buddy who would always, in basketball, he was always the last person to make a basket before we'd go on. I
Yeah,
remember there was at one point somebody was messing around with him and didn't let him do it. Played a terrible game.
yeah.
Horrible game.
I think it plays with your psyche.
Oh, for sure.
It-
Absolutely.
It gets in your head and,
Absolutely.
you know, plays that mental game with you. You know,
Yeah.
I played hockey for years, and I always used to, you know, you'd line up in the circle with all the other players for the face-off, and I'd always start yakking at the guy beside me,
Mhm.
throw him off his game,
Yeah.
right? You get in front of the goalie and you start chirping at him.
Mhm.
Different things like that, you know?
Yeah. The mental side of it.
So, yeah, like, I mean, one of the things I always used to tell my kids when they go on the ice, the first shot you take it right at the goaltender's head.
Yeah.
Because then he's,
Whoa. Yeah.
whoa, what do I do now? Like, then he's
Mhm.
on his heels.
Yeah.
And the next shot that comes, he's worried.
Yeah. It's all
You know, so
strategy
then
based.
You
Absolutely.
know, it throws them off right at the very beginning.
And I'm always curious, and I think that I have my viewpoint on it, but even this will be a good question for you, is like, what sets apart professionals from the amateurs? Is it the more so the mentality, or is it the physical side of it, or is it both versus the amateur side?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So I can go down two avenues with that. Professionalism, professional sports players or
Mhm.
professional people. I think a lot of it is mental
Mhm.
and social.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as a sports figure, like you look at all these sports stars, the ones that go out and meet the young kids
Mhm.
and show up at the Shriners hospitals
Mhm.
and you know, do fundraising events and give their time. Those are professionals. Those are guys that are true professionals. But also the guy that can be mental in the game, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, if you're number one in your team or your field,
Mhm.
having the mental awareness or mental capability to stay focused and be there shows professionalism.
Yeah.
If you can stay there knowing that everybody else is smacking at your heels,
Yeah.
coming up behind you, and if you can block that out and stay focused, that's professional.
Mhm.
You know, you look at guys like Wayne Gretzky, you know, great player, great hands, skills, maybe not the fastest guy on the ice, but he could thread the needle every time,
Mhm.
right? And he's always got guys chopping his ankles and smacking his hands, but he keeps focused and he keeps playing the game, right? So
Yeah.
guys like that, that's professional. And then on the other end of that would be the skill level,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you obviously have to have skills to be a professional.
For sure.
You can't just, I can't go play soccer on your team and be a
Mhm.
professional.
Yeah.
I suck at soccer.
Mhm.
I like watching it. I don't even know all the rules,
Yeah.
right? So you can't be a professional if you don't get some skills. One of the things though that I truly believe, and I coached hockey for a lot of years. I played for till I was in my 20s, well, till I was in my 30s. But when I stopped playing organized hockey,
Mhm.
I started coaching.
Yeah.
And me and a friend coached for 23 years together. And we had a lot of kids that always wanted to be on our team
Mhm.
because I think we were good coaches, but we worked well together. And either one of us would rather take a kid with a great attitude and maybe not all the best skills
Yeah. Absolutely.
over a real skilled player that had a poor attitude.
For sure.
Because we could teach that kid how to be good,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't teach that good kid how to have a good attitude,
It's a lot harder for sure.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for instance, we had one young guy on one of our teams, and we had him for actually 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Fastest kid on the ice. Didn't have great hands, but he was fast. And we always played against this one team. So back in the day, there used to be icing calls.
Yeah.
You'd fire it down the ice. You wouldn't have to chase it down.
Mm-hmm.
If it went all the way, it was icing, and it would
Mhm.
come back. So if it did go all the way down, and you chased it, if you got into the zone before it crossed the end line,
Oh yeah.
it was a live puck. So a lot of kids, if someone fired it down the ice, they'd just turn and come back because they would set up for face-off.
Mm-hmm.
Why waste my time skating all the way down the ice?
Mm-hmm.
So we taught Chris Forte was his name. We taught him that you're fast.
Mm-hmm.
You can fire it down the ice.
And go get it.
You can do anything and be there, right?
Mhm.
And we had this one team we played against all the time where the goaltender would come skating up to the blue line. And so Chris would flip it down into the corner, and we taught him to bust his butt and get down there. So everybody else would turn around and start skating back. Well, he would
Hustle.
book it to the other end of the ice, and he would actually beat the goaltender down there
Mm-hmm.
because the goalie's got the big gear on, right? And there was a few times he scored. So the next season, he gets picked on a different team.
Mm.
And the first time we played against him, he did that move on us. And as he skated by the bench, he turns to us and looks and says, "Thanks, coach."
Yeah.
And we're like, "What do you do?"
Son
You
of
just say,
Yeah.
"Good job, guys." Like, and as a coach, at that point, like I've coached some kids. We've had kids on our teams that have been in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get them there,
Yeah.
but that's my claim to fame. I've coached them when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
They played with my kids, right? So a kid like that, great skills and stuff, and great learning ability. As a coach, I think that's a feather in your cap to lose that great player,
Mm-hmm.
because in my eyes, as a coach, we want you to progress.
Absolutely.
I don't want to train you up and keep you in my
Yeah,
little
for
bubble,
sure.
right? Because I want you to get good and be good and grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's kind of
That's yeah.
long story about it.
It always bugs me when people get, or even when somebody is successful, and they start being like, "Oh, well, I played with them, or I did that, or whatever." And like even what you
Right.
just said about being like, that's your claim to fame, is that you helped them when they were younger,
Right.
but you didn't get, like you said, you didn't make them the NHL player,
No.
and that's I think where a lot of people tend to focus on that. Like, well, I was the coach of them. I was like, yeah, but when they were younger, like they
Right.
had all this
10
time
more
to
years
develop.
between that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And like that's a good outlook on it for sure to
Yeah.
have in that standpoint. I pushed them a little bit, and then they carried themselves the rest of the
Yeah.
way with the help
Give
of
them
others.
some tools
Mm-hmm.
to grow
I
and
think
help them along.
that would be a good coaching motto for every coach of every sports team, is to
Yep.
just give them a little bit and then let them do their
Let them
thing. Let them blossom.
flourish. Well, the best thing is that as a coach, you want to teach them and grow them to a point where they make a higher level than you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Same thing with
Honestly,
parenting.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to train them for success,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's no parent would say no to, wow, my kid succeeded,
Yeah.
right? Like, because that's what you want your kids to do. You want things to be better for your kids than they were for you
Mm-hmm.
in the end. Right?
So what would you say? I think from what you said, the mentality. It's
Mentality plays a huge role. mentality plays a huge role, definitely. Um, and like I said, mental and social.
Yeah, yeah. The
Because
professionalism in
right,
itself. Yeah.
right. Because yeah, you have to be mental. You have to be able to
Something
get
happened,
through
yeah.
that
Yeah.
and stay focused.
Take a knock, have some people slashing at your hands, whatever it is, getting punched in the
People
face.
cutting you down.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Anything like even socially, like say
Mhm.
in everyday life,
Mhm.
in road rage.
Yeah.
When you're driving down the street and somebody cuts you off or something, do you freak out and lose it, or do you go, oh,
All right.
okay, let's carry on?
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we're still gonna get to our destination.
Yeah, I'm always curious when people are in a public setting like that, and then something very small and minute happens, and then they just explode. Like I always wonder, it's like, what else was going on during your day, or what's happening during
Did
the
the
week?
dog bite you this
Yeah,
morning?
who got you?
Right? Slam
Yeah.
your finger in the car. and
Yeah,
all
shut
that.
your foot in the door.
Like what
Yeah.
happened, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, some people just snap, but
Mhm.
but you would think that something got them to that point. That just happened to be the last straw.
Yeah, and something has to. I hope something has to get them to that point. Because if nothing does get them to that point, and they're just like, I don't know, something's
That's
up.
a bad attitude.
Yeah, that's a bad attitude. Nothing was going right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about listening to music with your
Mhm.
art and stuff. What kind of music makes you happy? What's your feel good music?
I go on a lot of. I'll find one specific artist and like dive into that artist and try and get as much out of them as I possibly can. So it really changes. Like I go through a lot of different genres with that, but right now I'm into a lot of instrumental pieces, I guess you could say. So
More so relaxing.
yeah, well, not even sometimes not so much. I love also like keeping everything diverse. Like I'll have like, I don't know. There's like I'll take my phone and show you the top playlists that I have right now. That's the easiest way to do it. That's the easiest way. I've been doing an online course, so I was listening to a place called Brain Food,
Oh yeah,
and that's like, it's very,
kind of mellow jazz.
yeah, melodic, and then also very peaceful generally, but then there's like upswings. Sometimes it will be a little bit more upbeat, and then it will kind of die down. It was cool. I was actually writing, and I was noticing when the music would start getting a little bit more higher tempo, I'd start writing at a higher tempo, which is fun. So
Gets your brain going.
yeah, a lot of funk, a lot of groovy stuff, if you could put it that way. I have one that's called there's a gentleman that I follow on YouTube, and he just spins records, and it's called My Analog Journal, but he has one that's called Arabic Gems. So I've been listening to some Arabic music, Jimi
Nice.
Hendrix, there's a plethora of things, some rap music, and everything in between. So
Nice.
I wouldn't pick a specific genre or a specific group or anything. It's always a revolving door, coming in and coming out.
Depends what day it is.
Depends what day, depends on what time, depends who I'm with. Yeah, there's lots of different things.
I can listen to anything,
Yeah.
like except for rap. I can listen to a lot of music. Doesn't matter what's on the radio or who's, if it's your radio, you play what you want
Yeah.
and I'll listen to it, kind of thing. If I jump in my truck, I usually put it on classic rock,
Yeah.
maybe country, and
Yeah.
that's kind of where I stay.
Navigate.
But I don't mind listening to other stuff. Like if there's jazz playing in the background or blues playing or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'll listen to Alvin and the Chipmunks
Yeah.
if it's playing.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't mind it. But yeah.
I would probably say then, if I was to put it in, like when I get in my vehicle and pick something in particular, it would be more like that funk, groove, jazz style
Nice.
that I would be listening to, yeah. But then like I love Ozzy Osbourne, I love Black Sabbath, like I love the harder stuff as well too sometimes. I think that,
Right?
I guess that mine would be like, I just like good music, like I don't,
Yeah.
I want to be able to listen to it and be like, wow, they put, like there's some extra stuff in there that not very many people have. So
Or can do.
Or can do, yeah, absolutely. Pop music, not so much. Can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Yeah, then like the top 40 radio stuff. Well, even then, there's still some songs that I don't know. That's a tough question. I can't put my finger on that.
Yeah. So, if you were stranded on a desert island, you had a device with you,
Yeah.
your phone or your iPod or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but for whatever reason it could only play one song. It would never die. It was always charged, but it could only play one song, and it would just play it over and over and over and over. What song would that be for you?
It would have to be something that's complex. It has to have multiple layers that I. Oh man, it would be tough. I don't know if I'd pick anything that has lyrics because I might get annoyed with the person's voice after a while. Well, I don't know though. Like it's pretty hard to get annoyed with Elton John. But Benny and the Jets is would be one that might go a little bit crazy, but I don't know if I had to pick one song. Oh, I got like a million running through my head. I don't know, think about that one. I don't know if I can answer that. Who would you pick?
I would pick Eagles Hotel California.
Oh yeah.
Right
Yeah.
off the top. That
Yeah.
to me it has,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has their own meaning from the
Mhm.
song, and even if you listen to Don Henley and Glenn Fry talk about it doesn't really have the meaning that everybody thinks it
Yeah.
does,
Yeah.
the way they wrote it. But to me, the
It means
lyrics
so many different
has a
things.
story.
Oh, yeah.
and it has a meaning, and to me that is
That's a good song.
something that would have to be part of what the song would be that I would have to listen to over and over. And it's got a good beat and a
Yeah.
good music, good melody, you know. So I could do that one
Hotel
over and
California.
over.
Yeah, that one would be good. I don't know how I'd do with the guitar solo continuously going. That might drive me a little bit nuts. I think I'd probably end up picking an Elton John song.
Elton John's got a lot of good songs that could play over and over and over.
Yeah, like
When I first,
Rocket Man.
right?
I could listen to Rocket Man. That song is good to just hang out to and also listen to it before you get pumped up before something. So that's a tough one.
I
One
had
song.
a dream. I was way back in the day, had a headphone that was plugged into the stereo,
Yeah.
playing a record on my sister's stereo at her apartment. She was living in her very first apartment. I was young. I was like, I don't know, 13, 14, and I was at her place, and I had Eagles' Greatest Hits on there. And I was listening to it, and it was Peaceful Easy Feeling was what I was listening to.
I don't know if I know that one.
And through the song, it talks about, you know, making it through and stuff. And then right at the end, it goes into a riff about, you know, you got it easy. And it repeats it 3 or 4 times. And I'd fallen asleep with the headphones on. And I was dreaming of sitting in a classroom. And the teacher was pointing at us and saying at the end of the song, you know you got it easy.
Yeah.
And that one kind of always stuck with me too.
I love seeing somebody's creative process with how they are making music or how they make art or movies or whatever it is that they're doing. And I wonder how much music videos come from dreams that people have when they are listening to their music or when they've been working on a song and that's all they've been doing and they're just pounding out a song and they go to sleep and they're still thinking about it and then they have a dream about it.
Subconscious.
Oh yeah, I bet you there's tons. That'd be a good.
Oh, I'm sure. That's why some of these artists talk about writing that song down on a napkin in the restaurant because it just pops in there and they got to put it down. I write poems and I just finally filled up my one book full of poems.
Yeah.
And one of the longest poems I wrote all at once, just like I sat down and just wrote it. Took me like a half hour. But it was one of the longest ones I've ever written. And there's a couple other poems that I wrote that are just a couple stanzas and they're
Done.
You know, it takes a long time to write it because you keep changing it, you keep thinking about it, you keep changing it, and it's just interesting.
Yeah, writing is a very interesting art form. It's like almost more subjective than anything else, really, quite frankly, because as soon as you start reading it in your own tone, you can have all these different things that come from it. That's why, like, I don't like to read a book that is going to be made into a movie or vice versa. I hate seeing a movie first and then reading the book later.
Then you get a preconceived notion of what it's supposed to be.
I just watched all the Harry Potter movies for the first time, and I'm definitely regretting not reading the books first.
Yeah.
But I'll be excited to read the books too, because supposedly there's so much more detail in all of them that you can put in it.
Well, and a movie is a producer's take on it. A movie is a producer reading the book and taking what they perceive out of it and putting it on film.
Yeah.
Because what you get out of the book and what I get out of the book is two totally different
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah. That's also why I think that filmmaking is probably one of the highest art forms possible, because if you can then get what other people are perceiving of a character and cast them and produce a film around a character that they can imagine looks the exact same that you've selected, that's very impressive. If people are like, wow, that's exactly how I pictured them, it's like, you nailed it. And then the continuing on of like the stories, like the Lord of the Rings, for example, like a lot of the producing, like Peter Jackson, I think was the director of it, but he would take people who were doing sketches of the Lord of the Rings. One, they would just read the book and make comics out of them, and then he used them to then
actually make
draw the costumes, like do the costume designing and everything like that. Like they were the visionaries behind it.
Nice.
So it's like this huge, massive project. Lord of the Rings.
Collaboration.
Oh yeah, it's so cool, and I think that once again, like the collaboration, you have so many different moving pieces in film that you have the lighting, you have the costuming, you have the makeup, you have the producers, the directors, the actors, like all these people trying to come in together to produce something that everybody might have a different outlook on it.
Exactly.
And like that's nuts.
Yeah. Like sit down at the table and start hashing out what we're gonna do, because
and somebody's like, I don't even think that was even close to what was gonna happen.
Right? Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that makes it interesting.
Yeah. It'd be cool to be a fly on the wall and watch an entire process, a couple of years go by of everybody kind of hashing it out and making adjustments and changing them there, and then like that'd be really cool to see.
Well, even some of the animated shows, you know, you have people that do voices, you know, and movie stars, like big stars that do voices, and I mean, as an artist, they're putting a voice to the character that they see there, or that they perceive that character to be. Give them an accent or talk with a little bit of slang or whatever, right? So even that, you know, that person has a different perception of how that character should sound. than what you or I do, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them, you know, I mean, I watched the one with my granddaughter, the one with, is it Puss in Boots?
Mm-hmm.
And the cat is the
Antonio
swordsman,
Banderas,
right?
yeah.
Antonio Banderas, you know? And he's got that accent, but it works really well with
Yeah.
that cat,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it just kind of brings the character out. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing.
It is. Voice acting is probably one of the more underrated art forms as well too, with stuff like that. Like it's pretty fantastic when you can picture somebody, or even then, like then people will start making impressions of characters. Like that's
Right.
probably although some people would think that they would potentially be doing a mockery of it, but it is
Maybe.
mimicry is the highest form of flattery, supposedly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Trying to-
that would be. There's so many different points of film in that way. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Mhm.
awesome. So if you could have like lunch with anyone ever, dead or alive, and have a chat with them, who would it be?
Dead or alive.
And why?
That's a doozy. There's a couple. I think it would be pretty, and this is gonna be, might be a little bit dark, but it'd be pretty interesting to have lunch with some of the less positive historical figures in the world. You know, like the Hitlers and
Right.
Stalin and everybody in those.
Try and
Yeah,
dig
and
into their brain
and just be like,
see
what's going on? Where was the disconnect, or what was the perception that was made over history about those things? It would definitely be somebody who's passed.
see what makes them tick.
Yeah, I would definitely. It wouldn't be somebody who's alive right now, most likely. But there's a couple things. There's a couple people who I would definitely enjoy having lunch with, but it would be. I think Hitler would be interesting,
Yeah.
because there's just so much stuff going on in there that I think lots of people didn't really know, and I probably wouldn't be able to figure it out either.
Right.
But it'd be very interesting. And then hopefully he gets the bill.
Take away all the, yeah.
Yeah.
Take away all the layers and see
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
really
Peel it
was
back.
going on in that
Mhm.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's not probably what most people would say. I'd love to have lunch with Hitler.
But you never know, right? Maybe
Yeah.
maybe this gets people thinking.
For sure.
You know, I mean, if somebody can talk to someone like that and see what really was making them tick,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what would future generations do when something like that comes along again?
Yeah,
Then you might have an understanding of what's going on.
for sure. And I probably
Right.
would not be the one to be able to dissect and pick out. If someone's like, okay, you got lunch with Hitler, I'd be like, okay, give me some psychology books so I
Right.
can start reading up.
Yeah, I think that would be hard for any of us, I
Oh,
think.
what'd you discover, Keaton? Well, he's not a very nice guy.
Right?
Or maybe he was
Yeah,
too nice.
yeah, it's crazy. If you could write a letter to yourself, to your younger self, and give advice, what age would it be and what advice would you give?
One letter to, yeah. It would probably be, I'm almost too deep of a thinker for this one. I think it would probably be my 14-year-old self. Just when I was about to come down south, when I was moving away from my family and all my friends that I had and my sports teams and everything, I probably would have just been, it would have been very simple as well too. It would have been like along the lines of just kind of explaining that, you know, this is going to be probably the most important thing that happens to your family, and to just let it happen kind of thing. But I think my 14-year-old self would be like, yeah, right.
You don't know
You don't know
nothing.
shit. Yeah, you don't know nothing. I don't know. I think it probably would definitely be.
But you having gone through all this experience already,
Absolutely.
and knowing what's going to happen, and saying to your 14-year-old self,
Yeah.
"Hey,
I'm also
ride with it."
I'm also a huge believer in like everything happening for a reason. Like a lot of times when we're just sitting around the table or something and having a conversation with somebody and say, oh, like if you could go back and like change what you would have done in the past, like what would you have changed? And I usually have the response of being like, I wouldn't change anything, because I'm pretty happy with the way that life is going right now, and even the slightest change, and even potentially getting a letter that says, hey, everything's going to be all right, which would probably just be what I would write, like everything's going to be fine, don't worry about it. And like,
Chill.
nothing too deep as well too, just breathe.
Right.
And I think that if I was to go back, I wouldn't do a lot differently, because I enjoy the way that things have happened and the processes and learning from them. And because the second thought that I was going to do was writing to my 18-year-old self, which is a lot different than my 14-year-old self. But I think that a lot of the mistakes that I made throughout those times, I don't even think I know that it has impacted the way that I conduct myself now, and I wouldn't want to change that. And the people that I've met as well too, and the lessons that I learned, I think that would have been, to change those or to alter them in specific ways. Like, I have a lot of my buddies that I played soccer with. There was one year in particular that we went to the provincial final for the college, and with the chance to then go to nationals and be one of the first teams to have the first seed to go to nationals from the college. All these expectations, we were first in the South, and we had like the most goals for that anyone has ever had at some point at the halfway mark, which is only about 5 games. We had scored 28 goals in 5 games. So we were a very good team. And then I cut my finger and I severed 2 tendons in my hand, and I wasn't able to play because of a stupid finger.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the lessons that I learned from that, from being an idiot, then translated to changing that mindset, right? That was around the same time where I made that positivity, kind of trying to be conscious of being positive all the time. That's the exact same time as only 3 months after that I made that conscious change. So like, in order to go back or to write a letter to myself at 18 and be like, yo, you should probably not be doing any stupid stuff these next few years, I wouldn't have been where I'm at now compared to some of my other friends and colleagues in that way. Like, I would have been a different person. So 14-year-old self being like, hey, everything's going to be all right. In fact, this is going to be really important.
Cool.
Yeah. That's probably what I would have wrote. 14. Yeah. And actually, definitely would have wrote that to that age, and that's why.
Yeah. And I'm like you. I'm a big believer in destiny. We've got a agreement.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. We are who we are today because of the experiences we've had.
Absolutely.
And if you did go back and change something, we'd be a different person. We might not be sitting here having this conversation.
Absolutely.
I mean, I might be that guy out on the road with road rage.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So because of what's happened, it makes us who we are. And my wife and I have both been divorced before, and we married. We've been together 32 years now.
Yeah.
And I look back and say, our relationship together has grown and blossomed because of the experiences we both had with our previous relationships.
Yeah.
Right? Because we learned things with our first marriages, and then when we came into this marriage together, we don't do or do things different than what we did in our first marriages. So it's made us who we are. So yeah, your experiences throughout your 14-year-old
Yeah.
life and your
Yeah.
18-year-old life has made you this person.
Mm-hmm.
You are Keaton Craig today because of those experiences,
Yeah.
which I think is a great thing.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, like you said, I don't know that I would go back and change anything.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's times that I'd like to go back and say, yeah, I'd like to be my 16-year-old self again because I was playing hockey 7 nights a week,
Yeah, for sure. You had
Loved
unlimited energy.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had no cares, no worries, had my own car,
Mm-hmm.
play hockey every night. What else could a kid want, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that I would change anything
Yeah.
as per se.
Yeah. I think if you were to be able to go back into a time and not change anything and relive the same things that were happening, I don't know, I always think like I was an idiot. I was just like running around like a chimpanzee, making noise and chasing things and
Yeah, being crazy.
being crazy.
And I think we've all done that. What inspired you to choose the career you're in now?
I really wanted to get into physiotherapy when I was in school. Like I loved the sports medicine side of it. I loved the biology side. Like there was very few subjects in school that I was good at, and bio was one of them. And like that was a big push because I was like, oh, like I enjoy this and I'm actually pretty decent at it. And then sports medicine as well too. I had one class in particular that we were learning how to tape ankles and do all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that was awesome. I love that. So I guess that would be kind of what pushed me towards getting into the field that I am now. And then the continuation of also enjoying what I'm doing has been the biggest push. Like it's continuously pushed me forward to want to stick with it because that I enjoy my job quite a bit.
Right. You enjoy the interaction with people.
Absolutely, and the actual massage aspect of it as well too, like understanding the muscle work and everything in those ways. So.
And that goes back to like your training and your gym workout and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it all kind of
ties in,
meshes together, right?
Absolutely. Got a pretty good sweet spot with that, but we'll see how it goes.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so one final question. I kind of stole this from Lewis Howes. It's one of the things he does. So let's say you've made it all the way through your life.
Mm-hmm.
You've lived to be however old you want to be.
Yeah.
You know, 120, 500, whatever that number is.
87.
87. You've accomplished everything you've wanted to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
You've excelled at everything you've ever done. You've learned all the things you've wanted to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And when you pass and leave this world, you have to take everything. But you can leave 3 life lessons for people. You can write down 3 lessons for life. For people, what would those 3 lessons be?
3 lessons. There's a couple things that I enjoy on a regular basis and tell most people as well too that these are good ways to live by. So I guess that these 2 would have to be in there for sure, and they're both very similar. The number one is there's only winners or learners. You never truly lose unless you do not learn, if that makes sense. I think I might have butchered that. Basically, basically if you're continuously learning, you never lose.
Right.
And it's only when you don't learn from a situation that you truly are a loser in that way. Same thing as like, it's not about the mistakes that you make, it's about what you do after.
Right.
So I guess the second one would be more so what I would leave in one group would be, don't be worried about making a mistake, but be worried about what happens after you do that mistake. Another one would be just continuously strive to do your absolute best in everything that you do. And then
Nice.
the third one would be being, just try and be as present as you possibly can. There's a lot of things that are going on in the future that are way out of your hands, and there's things that have happened in the past that literally don't matter anymore because they're in the past.
Right.
So just being present, and then that will allow you to also be able to enjoy the people that you're around consistently and learn from them as well too. So it's not about the mistakes that you make, it's about what you do after them. Being present. I can't remember what the second one was that I said. Well, leaving the legacy. I can't even remember. Either way, those three. So that's what I would possibly leave if I
Nice.
could. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming out today
Yeah.
and joining us
It
and
was fun.
telling people your experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully people learn from these and maybe take some advice and use it in their lives, and maybe people watching will contact me and I can interview them.
Yeah, that would be fun.
So that'd be awesome. Anyways, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Join us again, and we will see you later. This has been Lessons for Life with Troy Hudkins and my guest, Keaton Craig.